So this video is going to be to show the students and the parents exactly what I would expect from your compare and contrast essay that is due on Monday. That would be December 6th, I believe. And the first thing I'm showing everyone is the outline that I made and sent home to all the students and parents, breaking down pretty much what every sentence should be about. And then I'm going to show you the revision checklist that the students will use to do their peer editing, and then what parents can look for with the papers at home, so that the parents can, or the students can really write a very successful paper. We're going to try to type these at school either with the iPads or the Chromebooks, but if we don't have the technology available, then we definitely will have to write them by hand. But having these things in this video should really help put together a great paper. So the way that this is broken down is we have an introductory paragraph that should be at least 4 sentences. So what I've done here is I've broken down what each sentence should be. The first one is an introduction that we are writing a compare and contrast paper over 2 sources about Christopher Columbus. The second sentence should be the introduction of the first text that we read, which was the book Encounter. The third sentence would be the introduction of the second text we read, which was the textbook. And then the fourth sentence is basically a general statement saying that there were many things to compare and contrast between the two. The reason why I did this is, and you'll see with the revision checklist, is that this is a really important part of the assessment and whether or not the introductory paragraph is considered either proficient or not. And then we break it down into our body paragraphs. The first body paragraph is the one similarity that we need between the two. Now, there are many similarities, but the most important similarity about the two texts that the class agreed upon was that they're both about Christopher Columbus. The book Encounter actually does not even mention his name, but it is safe to assume that it is. Some students may choose to do a different similarity between the two. Some said that there were pictures and other things that talked about travel and things like that, and those are fine. But the topic sentence has to clearly state what the similarity is. And then in order to really support the similarity, I need 3 supporting details from the texts that would include both texts. So supporting detail, for example, that they're both about Christopher Columbus is in both texts, it shows the 3 ships that he and his crew came over on. So you would have to state in both, from both sources where that came from. Page numbers are good. In Encounter, there are no page numbers, so we told the kids to just count. But in the student textbook, there are specific pages you can use. And so you can see that we have 3 of those that we need. So there's got to be 3 clear details. That gets you 4 sentences. And then your final sentence of that paragraph would simply be to restate what the similarity was between the two. The last 2 body paragraphs are the differences. And so the first difference, we said the most important difference from Encounter. Again, students have more choice than what we put in here, but we agreed that the Encounter was written with a negative bias, and we spent a day working on what bias means, so the students know what that is. If they wanted to write that as their topic sentence, that would end up being really good. And then what they would do is they would, in Encounter, give me specific details as to how it shows negative bias. Obviously, the greed for gold was one that we had talked about. And then the other one was that the narrator of the story warned his people of not letting them come to the land. And so showing where those are on the pages definitely is good. Providing the evidence of where you found your supporting detail is really positive. And then you're going to restate your difference. And the final body paragraph is the same thing. Again, it wouldn't be the most important difference from, well, it would be, excuse me. This one is from the textbook. How is the textbook different from the Encounter book? is that this is all informational. So it is not to entertain. This AP here stands for author's purpose. So if the student said the most important difference between the textbook and Encounter is that the textbook is an informational piece, or the author's purpose was to inform, that's very good. And simply for those two details, you could state simple facts that are there. You know, talk about the graph with Christopher Columbus's routes, what Christopher Columbus had to do to even get a ship to sail over, those sorts of things. But then you obviously have to cite where you got that from to support your details, which would be right from the textbook and the page number. And then finally, the closing sentence would be just to restate the difference. And then the fifth and final paragraph is the conclusion. We're looking for about 3 sentences. And again, I very specifically broke it down. The first sentence should be a restatement that this is a compare and contrast paper over Christopher Columbus. Restate the similarities and differences. You could do that in two sentences, where you could restate the similarity as one and restate the differences as another. And then the third would to be make a suggestion about the topic, possibly something about if you'd like to know more information about Christopher Columbus, you could read these texts or those sorts of things. The students know that making a suggestion is a really strong way to end a paper. Again, these are suggested number of sentences. They could be longer. I wouldn't make them any shorter, but if you have that information that we've just gone over in the outline, then you're in really good shape for writing the paper. Once the students have this entire thing filled out, which will probably be Monday or Tuesday of this week, then you're probably going to have almost your entire rough draft done. But you're going to need to take this from the outline and put it into rough draft form. When that is finished, the next thing the students will do is move on to the revision checklist. And a lot of these things that you'll see are really important and are exactly what we just spoke about going over the outline. For example, in the introduction, it states the 2 sources. If we go back to that outline, you can see right there, if they did what it says in the outline, they have no problem checking that off. If not, then that students can, in their peer revision, or if you're doing this with your student at home, you can make sure that those are in there. The introduction should state the similarities, that there are similarities and differences. It's not going to state what they are, but it should state that there are similarities and differences, or in this case, what we would call compare and contrasting information. That's another thing that's right there on the outline. If you have that, you can check that off. There are 2 to 3 similarities in the compare paragraph. We're looking for 3. If you go back to the outline, you can go compare is the same thing as similarity. We have 3 supporting details. The first difference paragraph identifies that it is a contrasting paragraph. You go back right there. Most important difference or contrasting thing. As long as that's stated, you are in good shape. Again, if you're missing any of these, you can go directly back to the outline and look to see where you're missing it. And then the difference paragraph has evidence to support it. We're looking for 2 pieces of supporting evidence for the first difference paragraph. And then the same thing for the second difference or contrasting paragraph, that they have a second difference and that it has evidence to support it. And the final thing to look for is that you make sure in the conclusion you restate the introduction, which includes that you're comparing and contrasting the 2 sources. And the only difference is that in the conclusion, the introduction states that there are similarities and differences. The conclusion would restate what those similarities and differences are. So if you go back to that outline, you can see here that you should clearly restate those similarities and differences, which again is compare and contrast. And that could be 1 or 2 sentences. That's up to what the students do. So if the students follow along with this very detailed outline, and then you go over the revision checklist and you're clearly able to check off all of these things reading your student's paper, obviously you want to look for spelling and punctuation and those things. They're really going to get a good score on their paper. It should be very easy for me to see when I read it that they've followed everything they're supposed to, worked hard, and got a great grade. If you have any other questions, please make sure to contact me either through email or if you need to leave a phone call, and I'd be glad to get back with you. I hope this video really helps, and good luck writing, students.